Welcome, golfers, to the 19th episode of the Read It, Roll It, Hole It podcast. Very fortunate to have a special guest, Karl Morris, on the call today. Welcome, Karl.
Thanks, Ollie. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to have you on. Karl is for those of you who don't know, I'm sure many of you do, he's a performance coach. He does, lots of work with lots of all levels of golfers. And I'm a massive fan of your podcast, Karl. Really love that. And I've attended a couple of your workshops as well. You do all over the country. Well, normally anyway, you do them all over the country.
In normal times when we can stand in front of an audience and speak to people. Yeah, that's what I enjoy doing the most. So yeah, I'm short of human company, Ollie, unfortunately, in terms of presentations. Hopefully we get back to that at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be good to get you back down at Ross. And your books are wonderful as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed reading the two books. So it's good, and I recommend it to all the listeners. So Karl, we're going to have a sort of a friendly discussion today, if you're happy, just on sort of life and see how we go. We haven't sort of pre-discussed this, so we'll rock and roll.
That's the way I always do it, Ollie. I don't have a line of questions. I think that's the best way of doing it. Sort of a non-linear way of interviewing.
Brilliant, great stuff. It's a bit like, it's like a non-linear. Is a bit like golf. Would you say?
Completely, yeah. I think if we look at the game of golf, it's probably the most chaotic game in the sense that you've got an ever-changing dynamic environment. You've got an ever-changing golf course. You've got an ever-changing body. You've got an ever-changing sort of state of mind that you're in. It's the most non-linear game there is, and yet we tend to try and solve all the problems in a very linear, structured fashion. And the more I've looked at it, the more we can sort of go down some pretty dark holes by trying to fix things by linear thinking.
Yeah, that's it's so true, isn't it? Can you expand on that, Karl? On the non-linear type of coaching. Expand on that. What do you mean?
Well, let's take putting for example, Ollie, because it sounds like from the title of your podcast that's an area dear to your heart.
Absolutely.
If you look at the sort of standard solution for improving your putting, it's to the idea that you would stand in the same place and repeat a movement over and over and over again with perhaps some constraints like a mirror or some clubs or things like that. And in the hope that then you would go out on the golf course and that would transform your putting. Now, I'm not saying there's not a place for that in terms of developing some efficiency of movement or giving your brain a framework to work with. But then, the number of people that I've seen do that work endlessly on creating robotic movement, spend hours and hours in the same place. You can usually tell when they've been on the putting green in the summertime because you've got two big footprints where they've been for 3 hours. And then they get out on the golf course and it doesn't really transfer. But then you look at, what's the requirement of being a good putter? Well, fundamentally, the requirement of being a good putter is that you are able to predict what a golf ball will do on a particular putt with one chance to do it, one opportunity to read it, and you'll have never had this putt before, and you'll never have this putt again in these conditions. So if the ability to become a good putter is about prediction of what a ball will do based on one attempt, surely more of our practice should be based around that theme, that you get good at prediction based on one attempt rather than endlessly repeating the same movement over and over again. Because what we do know, and anecdotally people will say that when they putt really well, you'll hear phrases like, I knew it was going in the hole. Well, how do you know it was going in the hole? It's probably because your imagery on that particular putt was really, really strong. So, I'm a big believer in what you do before the putt, before you actually step up to the ball, is a huge factor. Now, if you're only ever working on your putting stroke, I'm not anti-technique, but if you're only ever working on that, you're actually missing out a huge part of the puzzle of becoming a good putter, because the creative element, the imagination that's involved in giving your brain body system a map to operate on, that's hugely important. I don't think many of your listeners have probably spent enough time working on and improving their imagination. And then you also look at what is another big factor is your ability to deal with missing, because most of the time, even a great putter will miss a lot of putts, so the idea of what you do after the ball has missed and your reactions to that, I think that is a huge area to get better at. But if you're just standing there watching one ball go in the hole after another, you're not working on any of those factors that are so important once you get out onto the golf course, and not only, as I understand it from the motor skill learning, is that there's that rote repetition of the same movement over and over again is really a poor learning strategy. It's not how we learn to get better and develop skills. So that's probably a long answer to a short question, but it basically, to me, it involves getting really clear on what are the requirements to actually become a good putter, and having a stroke that is, I'll use the phrase repetitive, is only a small part of a really quite big but very, very interesting puzzle.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Karl. Those golfers who stand there for hours certainly wear the green out, but also they're not. It's like bull bashers on the range, isn't it? Same concept.
Well, if you look at it, Ollie, I mean, most people would say that they were better putters when they were younger than when they're older. And I've always sort of struggled, why, not everybody, but why is that the case for most people? Well, then have a look at what we did as kids to become good putters. Now, you don't see many kids who've just started to play the game and they've not had too much instruction. You don't see them standing there trying to do the same thing over and over again. What did we do as kids? We played lots of games. We played against our mates. We played for a few quid. We played for a can of Coke or whatever it may be. Go back into the history of the game. The great, Spanish players, Seve and Olazábal. How did they grow up as caddies? They would play games with each other on the putting green. So all of those games that we played as kids, there's deep learning going on because you're developing ability to get the ball into the hole based on one attempt. And then as we get older and supposedly more intelligent, we get lost, we disappear down this rabbit hole of technical perfection, and in the end can just lose sight of that creative element of the game that just releases the opportunity to become a better putter.
Totally. Yeah, totally agree. So like from what you're saying, Karl, my understanding is obviously there's a pre-shot routine, there's like a during shot routine and a post-shot routine. We call it whatever you might, but there's three areas where we need to place our attention. So going back to the sort of pre-shot, going into targeting, can you and visualization? It's my favorite word. I think it's sort of perhaps the most important skill in life, not just in putting, but can you expand on that topic and perhaps give the listeners, obviously you've said it's important to practice that area. Like how do they go about and practice that and find the best way for them?
Yeah, I think it's an area that we're perhaps only even scratching the surface of understanding, like that, what happens to create movement. Well, I think we're pretty clear that humans will organize movement around a clear intention. Going back to our evolution, when we had to secure
just lost you there, Karl. Are you back?
Sorry, Ollie. My internet just decided to be a little bit temperamental. Yeah, I was just saying that just going back to our evolution, that we evolved as species as a result of throwing objects to targets, to secure prey. Now I can't imagine that when cavemen were roaming around, that there were too many rock throwing coaches or spear throwing coaches. Thankfully, we were probably petered out as a species. But you think what must happen to throw an object to a target? At some level, we get an image of what the task is. So you get onto the putting green and employ that idea. One of the most powerful things that you can understand is that if you ask the right questions, that good questions will create vivid images in the brain. If I said to everybody listening to this podcast now, what color is your car, or what does it look like when you walk into your house, you'll get some images flashing up into your head of those situations. So as ridiculously simple as it sounds, one of the ideas that we talk about in the Lost Art of Putting is that you walk onto the green and you look at the putt and you ask yourself a simple question. And that question would be, what does this ball need to do to go into the hole? Now, by asking that question, what your brain body system will do, it will get to work. It'll get to work to see what the ball has to do in terms of line and pace into the hole. And one of the big things for me is can you see the entry point? So by asking that question, you'll create some images in your mind. And then, what we find with a lot of players is you can get really creative with this. Some players will see a line that's got a color to it. Some people see a liquid pouring into the hole. So you can kind of play around with and personalize these visual images. And then what I would say is get onto the green, do lots of single putts from lots of different places. And notice your tendencies. Do you tend to overread? Do you tend to underread? Are you better at right to left to right, uphill, downhill? So become much more tuned into your own tendencies as a putter by asking these good questions that create good images, and then you'll find out much more about your own tendencies. Because I think if there is a route to better golf, it's just becoming really, really clear on what your tendencies are as a unique human, as a unique individual, a unique golfer.
No, I love that. Excuse me. Do you something I found, Karl, is that especially better players, when we're going into visualization and simulating what they see, that quite often they can see it different on left to right and right to left, as in what they see can be different. Is that something you've experienced, and can you perhaps go down the rabbit hole to explain why that might be?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I certainly wouldn't deem myself expert enough to understand why that happens. But yeah, I think really great putters do see slightly different visual images for maybe left to right or right to left or uphill, down. We get some players who have different colours, whether it's left to right or right to left. So again, I think it's just getting out there and just paying a little bit more attention to what goes through your brain before you set up over the ball. It's the bit that's missing for most people's practice. Even looking at what most golfers do before they go out onto the golf course, they'll walk onto the green to warm up with putting with 3 balls, which is just about the craziest thing you can ever do, because you'll stand there with the first ball and leave it short. The next one you'll knock it past. And then, like the genius that you are, after 3 attempts, your brain manages to work out how to knock the ball in. And then you get on the golf course and you only get one attempt. We've had some pretty good players, in the last couple of years report back that, and it sounds too ridiculously simple, that they've transformed their putting ability as a result of practicing much more just with one ball. Lots of games and lots of situations where you're simulating what you have on the golf course. I think that the technical bit can be done pretty quickly. You can check. I'm not against checking things and, checking your alignments and stuff like that if you feel that helps. But surely once you've done that, get into the art of becoming a great putter rather than being lost in the science of the stroke.
Okay, no, that's cool. So our golfers are now, the pre-shot is good. So they're asking themselves good questions. What does a good putt look like? They're reading the putt, they're visualizing it, they're perhaps feeling what a good putt feels like by practice swings. They step up over the ball. What techniques or tips or advice can you give the listeners perhaps to quieten the mind in that stage? Because we've all been there, stood over that 3-foot putt, we stood over and we've gone, oh sugar. We've had that moment. So yeah, can we sort of expand perhaps on that topic, Karl?
Yeah, if you look at what goes on when we do step over the ball, that causes all of the problem, it's projections, it's the human mind's tendency to either go back to something that's happened in the past, i.e. you've missed a bunch of these 3-footers, or you're projecting forwards thinking, well, if I can just knock this one in, it'll keep me at level par, and if I can keep at level par after 9, surely I can par the next few holes, and if I par the next few holes, I'll get to 16. 16's a par 5 and I'll birdie that, and all of a sudden you're away with the fairies in terms of this sort of mind endlessly projecting backwards and forwards in terms of time. So, you know, to sort of set the context would probably be one of the players I've worked with for many, many years, Graham McDowell. You know, one of the things I spoke to him a couple of years ago, and he'd been struggling with his putting stroke, struggling with his putting, and I asked him, you know, what was going on, and he said, well, yeah, somebody had told him that he'd got this, that, and the other wrong with his putting stroke, which, you know, I always think it's interesting when somebody tells somebody who's won the US Open and hold a putt to win the Ryder Cup that they've not got a good putting stroke, but that's for another time. But, you know, and I said to him, I said, well, what's going on? What are you paying attention to on the golf course? And he said, you know, I'm very much involved in the stroke. So I said, you know, just remind me, Graham, when you've played your best, when you've held some of those putts to win tournaments, when you've closed out Ryder Cups, what were you doing well? And he smiled at me. He said, yeah, I know. I said, you're going to mention the breath, aren't you? And one of the things that we did for many years that we worked together is the idea that Graham, once he'd gone through his routine, would, before he actually stepped into the putt, he'd have his practice stroke, and then consciously, before he stepped into the ball, would be to be aware of consciously releasing his breath. Now, what sounds a very sort of trite thing to do has a lot of things going for it, because by definition, our mind can go into the future or it can go into the past, but our body can't. The body is a gateway to the present moment. So by actually focusing on consciously releasing your breath, you're kind of grounding yourself in the present moment as a result of doing that. But there's also a physiological response to that as well. It tends to activate more of a sort of relaxation response. And what that did for Graham also, when he released the breath, it was a signal that we'd set up that you've done everything you can now. The putt will either go in or it will miss, but you've done all you can. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, he was playing in the Dominican Republic a week or so after that, and we said that he agreed to sort of focus a bit more on this. Anyway, he'd been struggling for a while in tournaments and was playing only on exemptions, so he was kind of running out of exemptions on the PGA Tour. So he played pretty well the first couple of rounds, and then on the Saturday at this Corrales event in Dominican Republic on the PGA Tour, he had 20 putts in the third round on the Saturday, which is never a bad thing to do on the PGA Tour, is to have 20 putts. And he actually had 15 single putts, one after another. He only came out of his bubble. We laugh about it now as a result of, he had a discussion with his caddy as he was walking onto the green, who reminded him that he'd had 15 straight single putts.
Is your sound gone all funny, Karl? Sorry. Speak again.
Hello?
The sound, I don't know if it's my earphones. Hopefully it's my earphones, but yeah. Speak again, Karl.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Jesus. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, that's better. I don't know how that's going to work now without my if this microphone's going to pick up two lots of sound. But yeah, my earphones obviously just give up the ghost because they sounded like you were underwater for a long time. Sorry.
Okay.
So hopefully the listeners got the end of the message there, what you were saying. So about Graham McDowell. So that's
the culmination was that he actually won that tournament. Now, was it just a result of paying attention and releasing his breath? No, that was just a lot of things were in place, but it was a great point. It was a great focus of attention for him to have over the ball, and I think that would be something that, you know, your listeners could experiment with. Is something when you're over the ball that grounds you in the present moment, like the breath.
Brilliant. No, totally, totally a great way to, well, as you said, yeah, to get into that present moment. You said something a minute ago that really caught my attention, which was the body is a gateway to the present moment. Can you expand on that? I like that. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's maybe just one of the most important things that you could consider in sport, really. Well, you know, if everybody listening now, if I said to everybody, think of something that you did yesterday, and immediately something will pop up that you did yesterday. If I said to everybody, I want you to tell me what you're going to do at the weekend, you'll project forward in time. But then if I said, as you're sitting here listening to the sound of my voice, and you notice the feeling of your feet on the floor, or you notice the sensations of your body, just by placing your attention on your body, the body can only exist in the present moment. So it's if you think of all of the great disciplines like yoga, meditation, martial arts, like pretty much all of them at some point get you to pay attention to the breath, get you very much body focused. So by placing your attention on your physical body, by definition, you're actually back here in the present moment. So it's such a simple tool that is underutilized in golf. Think about the 90% of golf that we're not playing. That's when a lot of the damage is done on the course mentally, because we're doing all of these projections. We've had some good success with players doing very simple things like just simply being aware of the feeling of your feet as you're walking in between shots. And, as a result of that, you tend to pick up on a better rhythm of your walking and things like that. But by paying attention to the body, you are back here in the present moment. So instead of having a theory about playing one shot at a time, or a theory about being in the present, you've actually got a discipline that you can work on. That's something that we've run a lot of meditation, mindfulness courses over the last couple of years, and that's something that the mindfulness coach that I work with, Vin Harris, has made me very aware of, is that at any given point in the day, you can simply just check in with your breath, and by checking in with your breath, you tend to just calm yourself down and stay a little bit more here and now.
Yeah, wonderful, love that. It's you're placing your attention on your body or your senses, right? Is it linked to the senses?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
completely. There was a great therapist called Fritz Perls, who one of his famous lines was, we need to stop thinking and come to our senses. And that's a great way of describing that. When we tune into our physical senses, what we can feel, what we can hear, the sights around us, the sounds around us, we tend to be brought back here and into the present.
On that note, obviously that's something else that golfers need to practice: meditation, I would say, or breathing. How can they learn? How can they train that? Have you got something on your site, or what's?
We run mindfulness courses. We do them on Zoom at the moment, and they run it's a 4-week course. So you can have a look at the mindfactor.com. There's a guy called Vin Harris, who I do the courses with, who's just a phenomenal teacher of this. He's been actively involved in mindfulness for 40 years. He's part of the MSc program up at Aberdeen University. So it's not just kind of me and a mate doing it. It's pretty well researched, solid research behind it, and the benefits of mindfulness, the amount of literature available on the benefits for us all of that is pretty great, and it's something you don't have to be on the golf course to do it. And it's, it might benefit your golf, but more importantly, it'll benefit your life.
Especially in the current climate we're in with COVID, Karl.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be a foolish person, I think, to say that the situation that we've been through, the situation that we're going through, and the situation that we're going to face isn't anything other than daunting and very worrying. And it's very easy to get carried away in these projections. So I think I think the discipline of mindfulness, of being able to, it sounds trite and corny, but getting a little bit better at being here and now. So you're facing whatever you can do today and making the most of today in whatever small way it possibly is. I'm a big believer in accumulating good days to get closer to being the golfer that you want to be, or the person you want to be, or the fitness, or whatever it may be. So I think in the current situation that we're all unfortunately going through, I think the skills of being mindful are more required than ever, really.
Yeah, totally agree. Wonderful. Okay, so we've done the pre-shot. We started to breathe over the ball, so we're hitting it in the present moment, looking at our senses, or focusing on our senses. We've hit the shot, the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's go. No, yeah, good, the bad, the ugly. It doesn't matter what the result of the shot is. What do we do then? The post routine. What do you advise there to deal with? Yeah, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah, I mean, just before we get to that, I want, one caveat I would give everybody with this is that, pretty much my passion is that, it's not a case of what is right for everybody to do. It's very much about exploring your own experience and sort of personalizing it. But I think the number one thing to look at with the post shot, if there was a great mental skill for most golfers to explore getting better at, it would be acceptance. And we could spend a whole podcast talking about acceptance, because it sounds simple, but it really isn't, in the sense that acceptance isn't resignation. You're not giving up. You definitely want to hold the putt, but underlying everything is the firm conviction that whatever this ball does, because it's only got two options on a putt, it's either going to go in or it's not. That either outcome, you are going to be 100% okay with that outcome. And as I said, you can have a conceptual understanding of that, but actually to build this into your behavior takes constant commitment over a long period of time. There are a number of players that I've worked with that, every week we get back to understanding the importance of acceptance, because to me, if you look at, and all of us have experienced this, you see some of the funny strokes and the jabby strokes and all the rest of it in putting. Now we can try and fix that with technique, but good luck with that, because I'm more interested in the source of those jabby techniques and those stabby strokes. And to me, underlying all of it is a lack of a willingness to accept any outcome. There's so much fear where putts are concerned, because there's a finality to it, that it's almost like the brain doesn't want to face the outcome of a missed putt. Now, the paradox of it is if you can completely accept if the ball goes in or if the ball misses, if you can 100% accept that with every fiber of your being, you're actually free to make a stroke, because the strange putting strokes that you see when the hole is involved, you don't see when people put to open space, when there's no outcome involved. So I think building in the concept of acceptance is such a powerful idea to look at, and not just for putting, for the whole game, because when you have total acceptance, if somebody said to me, what's the greatest example of mental toughness that you've ever seen in the game of golf, it would be, for me, one of my heroes is Bernard Langer. You look at the guy now, and he's in his sort of well into his 60s, but could still probably win on the main tour. He's a phenomenon. He doesn't look any different than he did 30 years ago as well. I mean, whatever Bernard's on, it should be worth taking. But to me, if you look back at, some of your listeners may not remember this, but the Ryder Cup back at Kiowa Island many years ago, and Bernard had a 3-foot putt to win the Ryder Cup. And so not only is it a putt important to him, he's got a whole continent resting on the outcome of this putt, and he missed it, and he missed the 3-foot putt to win the Ryder Cup. And because America held it, they retained the cup. And what I look at after that is that, first of all, what Bernard said, he said, you know, he's a man of deep faith, but he said that he looked at what he'd done, he read the putt, he committed to the putt, he hit the putt where he wanted to, but it just didn't go in. And the amazing thing was then, you know, imagine most people, if they've missed a putt to win the Ryder Cup, they would have probably stayed indoors for 3 months. But the week after, Bernard went and played in a tournament in Germany, in his own country. And I can't remember the tournament, the event, it was a European Tour event, and he won it by 7 shots. I look at that and think, my goodness, here's a guy who's just missed the putt to win the Ryder Cup. That would have tormented a lot of people. But the week after, he goes and wins by 7 shots. And clearly what Bernard had done is he's had a tremendous acceptance of an outcome in the most extreme circumstances. He'd done all he could, but he accepted the outcome. It wasn't the outcome he wanted, but he accepted it, and that allowed him to move on. So, as I said, for anybody listening, you can get the conceptual understanding of this. It sounds great. You think, oh yeah, I'll just accept any outcome, but you really need to live this. And keep doing it and keep committing to it, because the actual embodiment of acceptance is very different than the sort of theoretical principle.
Yeah, again, it needs training, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, it's not a continuum. You know, you'll go out some days and your level of acceptance is high, and then other days, you know, you fall into the trap as well. You go out and your level of acceptance is high, and you hold a bunch of putts, and then the mind sort of kicks in and thinks, oh, I've got it now. If I'm really accepting, I'm going to hold loads of putts. And then no, that's not the case. Acceptance is acceptance, good, bad, or as you say, indifferent. So, you know, if there was something for people to experiment with for an extended period of time, it is the commitment to acceptance. And as I say, don't fall into the trap of acceptance being resignation. You're not giving up. It's not that you're not trying to hold putts. You're trying with every fibre of your being to knock it in. And it's tough to grasp intellectually this, but the prize, the other side of that intellectual concept, is a freedom of a putting stroke to allow you to get closer to your true capabilities.
I like it. Karl, you spend like your life helping others, right? That's what you do. That's what you get paid to do. And what I want to know is, why do you have that sense of wanting to help people? What's your main driver? What's your why to have that? You know, because that's all you do is help other people, right? Not all you do, but sorry, but you know what I mean. That's your job, right? So yeah, what's the?
It's a really good question, Ollie, and I've perhaps not sat and contemplated it maybe enough for myself, but you know, I've just always been very interested. I mean, I you know, wasn't particularly successful. I got in the way of myself when I was trying to play, and so I became interested in that purely at first for myself. But then I think my failures as a player helped me with other players as I went along. So number one, I'm just intensely curious about what gets in the way of performance. So it's something that interests me. I do enjoy chats like this and getting people on my podcast and sharing ideas at seminars and things like that. And I've kind of always worked on the premise that, you know, I've not got the answers. Sometimes I think I ask decent questions, but I've certainly not got all the answers. But yeah, there's some great moments to be had when you know, if you played a small part in somebody getting the handicap down, or you know, everybody thinks that the sort of top players are the real glamour end, and yeah, that's nice. But you know, if you can help somebody, you know, get a bit closer to what they want to get out of the game of golf at any level, it's still a great thrill, really. So in answer to your question, number one, I'm interested in the subject, and number two, you know, there is some great pleasure when you do assist people.
Wonderful. No, that's good. Tell me, like, what's the one thing that mentally gets on your goat? What's the one thing that really, like, you're obviously helping people with mental skills all the time. There must be times that, you know, that gives you anxiety or whatever makes you really angry. Perhaps could you share what that might be, and then what's your techniques? What technique do you do to, you know, that like helps you calm down or get back into the present, maybe?
Yeah, I think you know, what did they say? hairdressers often don't have a good hairstyle, do they? That you can have a great ability to make people look good in the mirror in front of you, but sometimes you don't do it yourself. And yeah, I think sometimes there's a challenge applying all of these things in your own world. And I'm as guilty as anybody probably in the past of getting too annoyed if the traffic's building up in front of me, or I get stuck at an airport or whatever. And I think certainly what we've all been through the last 12 months or so has aided probably one of the bigger elements to working more efficiently, and that's perspective, isn't it? I think we can lose sight of what's truly important, and I think perspective is a wonderful thing, and or a vital thing. And I think getting a little bit better at just checking yourself on a regular basis and actually saying, how important is this? And I think you mentioned about players, and I think I'm a bit better now than I used to be. That in the past I probably got too emotionally involved in outcomes, and now I'm a bit better at recognizing, if somebody's done well and they've won a tournament, I need to make sure I don't get carried away of my importance in that, because I didn't hit a single shot, I didn't hit a single putt. It wasn't me who won the tournament. I might have assisted them a little bit, but it wasn't me hitting the shots. So don't take too much credit when somebody does well, but by the same measure, I'm a little bit better as well if somebody's not done well and they haven't performed well. That I've done my best and I've helped them in whatever way I thought was the best way. So it wasn't my fault either. That by the same measure, it wasn't my fault if they didn't perform well. So don't get too high when somebody does well, and don't get too down when somebody doesn't perform as well as they could. You're trying to create a collaboration, and it's perspective is such an important element in all of this.
Interesting. Yeah, it's an important word, isn't it? Perspective. Just put things into perspective. You can, yeah, absolutely.
You think a lot. You look at some of the language that's used around golf, and perhaps we the commentators on TV will be a bit better at this going forward. When you terms like this could be a disaster, and it's a tragedy that he missed that putt, and you think, no, it isn't. He's missed a putt. He's still won $1 million finishing second or whatever. It's not. Then words like tragedy and disaster shouldn't be applied to somebody missing a putt or missing a cut or whatever in golf. I think we're a bit clearer now of what's happened, what tragedy and disaster is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Karl, you've over the years you've worked with over 100 tour players. I bet you've met some right characters along the way. Now, you can name names or you don't have to name names, but I want to know who is like the most crazy, or if you don't want to say who, what's the craziest thing you've seen like one of them do, like a funny story on tour? Like, I don't know, like an example for me is my best mate, Dav, was a very good golfer, and he got this bit of advice from someone once, which was put elastic, but he used to get really angry, Dav, really, really angry on the golf course. And he told him to get this big elastic band, and he put it around his wrist. Every time he got angry, he would pluck it to like give himself a bit of pain. And I just remember playing the first 4 holes at Penrose, and like every shot, it was like ding, 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 ding. Well, by the time he got to the 4th, it was like nearly bleeding. But anyway, hopefully he listens to that and it laughs. But yeah, what's your crazy story? What's it of your crazy person?
Well, there's certainly a lot of craziness out there. I think one thing that comes to mind. I was lucky to work with Louis Oosthuizen a while ago when he won the Open at St Andrews, and people listening may or may not remember that one of the things that we'd set up was a trigger for his concentration, where he looked at a red dot on his glove before every shot to kind of get into the shot and then come out of it. And again, what seemed a simple thing had some layers underneath it. But that particular thing got a little bit of press. There was a bit of mystery about it at the time, because when he won, nobody knew what was going on, and they could see him looking at this dot on the glove. And after he won the Open at St Andrews by 7 shots, it was kind of in most newspapers and things like that for afterwards. And it was interesting. After that, I started seeing quite a few people with white gloves and red dots. And I do remember going around the country and I saw this guy on the first tee with a red dot on his glove. And I remember walking up to him and I said, "Oh, that's interesting. You've got a red dot on your glove." He said, "Yeah." He said, "I've no idea what it's all about." He said, "But I thought I'd give it a go anyway." So I thought, well, that just shows golfers will try just about anything.
Yeah, that's funny. It's a bit like plumb bobbing.
Yeah, it looks complicated and it looks difficult. So let's do it. I mentioned earlier on about gadgets and things like that. And again, I'm not totally anti gadgets, but I think they need to be used in moderation. I remember doing a putting clinic at Wentworth a couple of years ago actually, and some lovely guys there who were part of the day, and we talked about a few things about the kind of non-linear approach and more single puts and things like that we talked about earlier on. And this guy comes up to me at the end and he said, "I've just bought one of those putting mirrors." He said, "Are you telling me that it's a waste of money?" And I said, "No," I said, "it's not a waste of money at all." I said, "What you've got to do is wait for the winter." I said, "They're very, very useful in the winter." And he said, what to practice indoors?" I said, "No," I said, "in the winter time," I said, "when you get frost on your windscreen," I said, "these mirrors are a fantastic way of scraping the frost off your mirror, so you can use it for that." So the group thought that was moderately amusing. The group was there and they all thought it was moderately amusing. So it was he still reminds me of that when I speak to him.
That's all right then. He didn't punch you.
No.
That's good. Karl, mindful of your time, let's have just one more sort of question, or let's talk about drills potentially. I think par 18, am I right, you invented par 18?
Yeah, I would lay claim to that. There's an awful lot of things that I've stolen over the years, but I do find it amusing when I hear people explaining to me about what par 18 is, because I did come up with that. I did come up with that a long time ago, and it's an old one, but it's a good one. And
still the best drill ever, in my opinion. That I did it when I was playing, when I was a kid, nearly 20 years ago probably, and I still to this day subscribe it to people as the ultimate chip and putting drill.
Well, it is only because coming back to what we've talked about, what does a good training drill do? Well, it simulates every requirement of the game itself. Now, par 18, for those listening who don't know what it is that you go to the chipping green with you play 9 different holes from 9 different locations. 3 easy, 3 medium, 3 difficult shots, and every hole is a par 2. So you've got to chip it on, you've got a hole out. But the key to par 18 is to really take it to the nth degree. That, if you normally chip with your glove off, make sure that you do that. If you normally putt with your glove off, do that. Just replicate everything that you would do on the golf course when you come to play. Mark it with the same marker that you use. Use the golf ball that you'll actually play golf with. But the great thing is with par 18, every shot that you play has a consequence. Every hole is a simulation of the real game. But more importantly, if you keep your scoring, you've got a tangible way of measuring whether you're getting better at a crucial part of the game. I remember doing this with Darren Clark many years ago, and we got him going with par 18, and Darren didn't send that many texts, but I still have the text on my phone because he's such a competitive guy. A few weeks later, and it was just before he won the WGC event in Akron when he beat Woods, and he sent me this text saying shot par 18 for the first time. So it was a great example of this particular game created emotion. You had to deal with bad shots. You had to deal with everything that the game throws at you. So in 10 minutes of 15 minutes of par 18, it's maybe the ultimate training device, because you've got everything every question that the game's going to ask you, the training game will ask you.
Totally agree. What's the best score you've ever witnessed, Karl?
I've seen a couple of 18s. I've not witnessed anybody doing 17 yet. So if anybody out there gets a 17, they should let us know.
I've not turned professional. 17. No, I get a lot of my players doing it and reporting back, and I think I've shot level par. This is when I was a kid, twice or 3 times. with a chip in or two. But yeah, never shot.
18 is a seriously good score. I mean, for anybody, once you get under 21, you're kind of in business, really.
Do you have like perhaps a handicap scale there for it, Karl, or do you just make it for yourself, like?
Just make it for yourself, and the 3 medium, 3 easy, 3 difficult, that depends on your capability.
Sure.
If it's somebody who's just 20 handicap, you'd maybe play 9 relatively straightforward shots to just begin with and just get some confidence with. But if you commit, I would say for everybody listening, if you committed to playing that game once or twice a week the entire year, you will reduce your handicap. It's as simple as that.
Totally agree. Yeah. Would you limit to like only allowed to perform it once a day? Because
sorry, I didn't mention that, Ollie. That's the critical thing. You're not allowed to play it more than once, because again, you're simulating everything that the game requires of you. So you only get one go at the medal on a Saturday or a Wednesday night. So that's why par 18 should only ever be done strictly one time and one time alone. And if you duff it, there's no mulligans. You've got to just carry on with it. You've got to deal with the frustration. The stricter you are with it, the more you'll get from it.
Brilliant. Well, I love that, Karl. Just to finish then, on your website, you mentioned golden rules. So like the senior package I was looking at earlier, it's the 6 golden rules for the seniors. I don't want to give them all away. Can you give us half a golden rule to finish on?
Yeah, I think half a golden rule would be change your relationship to scoring, in the sense that, people go out and play golf and we're obsessed by par, we're obsessed by the score relative to our handicap. Change the frame on that. Maybe play a different game where you're scoring some of your processes hole by hole. I've not got time probably to go into the whole nitty gritty of it, but if you can focus on some processes that you want to do on each hole and you score those hole by hole, you shift your attention from something that you can't control, which is the score against par, to something that you can control, which is your process score. Not the ironic thing, the revelation for most people is if your process score goes up, your actual score comes down.
Love it. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, Karl. I've thoroughly enjoyed that chat today. Really appreciate you coming on. Can you please just share with the listeners, where do they find you on the web and on social media, and your podcast, improve your game. No, what is it? Improve your mind to improve your game. Boost your brain to
boost your brain to improve your game, I think is the tagline. Yeah.
Right.
I'm a bit of a Luddite with social media. I try and avoid it at all costs, really, and I know I'm in the minority with that. I just think it's something that should be used sparingly for lots of reasons. But the website is themindfactor.com. The books that were done with Gary Nicol, the Lost Art of Putting, and the Lost Art of playing golf, that they're available on Amazon. We've hopefully got a new one coming out this next year about the scoring game. And the Brain Booster, if you're interested in the podcast, that comes out every week, usually on a Thursday. So if you punch either my name in or the Brain Booster into your wherever you get your podcast, it'll hopefully come up.
Absolutely. For me, the library of knowledge just on your website is crucial. So I think it's important everyone goes on to that. I'll put the link into the show notes as well. So thank you very much for your time, Karl.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
Great stuff. We'll speak to you soon.
Okay. All the best.
Cheers. Thanks, Karl. Perfect. Oh, he's gone.